Okay. All right, welcome everyone. This is our brief webinar on the World Day of Remembrance State House Day of Action, which MassBike is co-hosting with our Vision Zero Coalition partners, scheduled for next Wednesday. We are hoping to really get a good turnout to fan out across the State House to make sure that we are doing what we can to let our legislators know what's important to us and what can be moving, hopefully, this session. We are rounding the sprint to the line for the end of the first year of the session, and now is a really good time to get our issues front and center for the legislators as things need to be getting out of committee. But we're also going to talk a little bit about what World Day of Remembrance is and how you can plug in locally. So if you can't join us for next Wednesday at the State House, no worries. We also encourage you to meet with your reps and senator in the district if possible, to really talk about what matters to you. And really, this is about relationship building. We have a couple of pieces of legislation we're hoping to get moving, but besides that, we are looking to have you become effective advocates so that as issues pop up, we are able to activate our legislators because democracy is not a spectator sport. And so we need you to jump right in. But yes, great. And if anybody who is here in real time, feel free to utilize the chat as well if you want to jump right on in. But we are going to fly through some slides and get into a little bit of collaborative conversation towards the end. Cool. So what do we have on deck? Next Wednesday, which is November 12th, I hope that jives with everybody, we will be at the State House for an informal lobby day. So what I mean by this is that we do not have a reserved room dedicated to ourselves. This is going to be a bit about of a lit drop. We do not have legislators on our schedule to speak to us. We aren't making any formal requests to State House News. We're not doing any press releases. This is really about an informational fanning out so that we are kind of doing a light touch to every single office because along with the pieces of legislation that we are hoping to get moving this session, we also want every office to know about World Day of Remembrance as a statewide event. So we'll also be providing some materials that detail some of the events that are happening all across the state. And your goal is to get out there and just make sure every office is aware of this crucial issue, because I am sad to say, but it's also obvious probably to everyone here that traffic fatalities hit every district. They hit every person, and the dangers of traffic violence is something so personal that it hits literally all across the state. So we're not favoring one office versus another. The way that the day is going to go next week, if you're able to join, at 10 a.m., we're going to meet at the State House Cafe, which is on the fourth floor. We're going to kind of commandeer a couple of tables, again, very informally. Emma and I will be there with our team at MassBike with all of the collated materials, with spreadsheets of where offices will go. And this is where we're going to have our home base. We are all going to be in action, so we do not have a dedicated room, which means that if you have any bags to bring, you need to have them with you. And if that's a problem, let us know. We can figure out a way to kind of have somebody be on watch somehow. But we, again, are going to be out and about across the State House. If you can meet us by 10 a.m., that'd be great. The State House opens at 9. Most offices open at 9:30. So we're thinking around 10 a.m. is a good spot. If you have any questions about parking around the State House, the website for the State House is very effective, but there's a couple of parking garages nearby. There's the Boston Common parking garage. There are parking garages by Pie Alley and Downtown Crossing. Of course, this is located near the Park Street T-stop and near the Downtown Crossing T-stop if you are taking the subway. And if anybody who's biking, there are bike racks outside of both entrances to the State House and also nearby on the streets around Suffolk University as well. Feel free to get in touch with myself or Emma or anybody on the Mass Bike team if you have any questions about getting to and from the location. Starting around 10:15, we are going to round up. We'll do brief introductions. Hopefully, we'll have to streamline some of this because we'll already have a lot of this in motion. We'll already know who's coming. We'll already know what offices are happening. But if you're just dropping in, that's also totally fine. No need to formally RSVP if you're just coming at last minute. Just show up and we'll be there. We're thinking around 10:30 till about 1 p.m. It's probably going to be about a 2.5 hour endeavor in full, probably a little quicker. We're going to be hitting the marble floors. And by that, I mean we're going to be hitting both sides for both chambers. We're going to be hitting all the floors to get every single district. Every single office should receive at least one of our handouts. The handouts will include the priority legislation that we're seeking, and it should also include a list of events that are happening across the state. And it'll give a detail about World Day of Remembrance is holistically so that we're really presenting ourselves as this is an annual event that we want offices to start to pay attention to in case they're unfamiliar with it. If you are coming, we do want you to have a meeting with your office. And you have a state rep, you have a state senator. You might even be able to get a couple of state reps because you probably represent a municipality that is split between a couple of representatives. We're happy to help schedule those if needed, but the be all end all is you to make the relationships with the reps. So our ask is for you to kind of do some of the legwork to reach out to those offices and let us know if you've made contact. If you don't know who your reps are or your senator is, that's totally fine. We'll also send a Find My Legislator link to you. But the goal is, again, making about a 15 or 20-minute meeting happen, and it's totally fine to have it with a office rep. Doesn't have to be the senator or the rep themselves. If you're meeting with a legislative aide or even anybody who's in the office, chances are they care about your issue as well. And frankly, most of the aides do the work in the state house anyway. So getting to them actually is an effective way of making the issue front and center for the representative. But we want you to have effective meetings. So if you want somebody there to join you for the meeting, let us know at MassBike. We can probably have somebody carve out the 15 or 20 minutes to come back you up. But that's going to be about a 2.5 hour bulk of the day work of just fanning out across the state house. And then if you've got a meeting, peeling off for that meeting. Um, because we're only expecting maybe about a dozen or so folks, you will be dropping lit at offices who you do not have representation of, which is totally fine. Which is why we're going to be meeting in the morning to kind of split up different regions. You may have a connection. Maybe you work in a different district than you live. Maybe you've got family in a different district than you work. If you have any sort of connection, we want to make sure that there's a little bit of personal touch to dropping by the offices. But, it may be the case that you are sent off to drop literature to a district that you have no connection to, which is also totally fine because, again, we are having the conversation really get to the human aspect of what World Day of Remembrance means. And it doesn't matter where people live. I think everybody wants to keep everybody alive out there on our roads. So just make that the front and center issue. So don't be surprised if you're going to a district that you might not necessarily have a personal touch to if it helps us divide and conquer. If you can't make the whole time, that's absolutely no problem. You're welcome to join for some or as little or as much of this as you can. We're asking this favor upon you, our stalwart volunteer advocates. So don't feel pressured to make the whole day, but please keep us in the loop as to what your day is looking like. And then a little bit after afternoon, we'll be rounding back up just to see how it went. Did you get a favorable response from the office? Did you get any sort of feedback that may help MassBike in our progress of getting co-sponsors for these bills? Did somebody you talked to, are they in a leadership role? Are they head of a committee? Are they able to help nudge these along? This is going to be the debrief feedback that will be very helpful for us and our work. So we ask that we do that towards the end around 1 p.m. Now, this is all fungible in terms of of the times. So if we need to meet a little earlier or a little later, we'll just make sure that we're keeping in touch. Great. Excellent. So the goals for the day of action really are to build relationship with the legislators. We want you to get to know them as people and have them get to know you as a concerned citizen. We hear time and time again that the most effective way to move legislation is to show up and make your voice heard in person. Yes, you can call. That's great. Yes, you can write a letter. That's also equally great. Or you can sign a form letter. But a lot of that ends up in literally just stacks of letters and literature, which may not have that personal touch. We want you to understand that legislators are human and they are responsive to human emotions and asks. So keep that in mind when you're out there. Another point of this goal of the day is to gather support for the bills that we got moving forward. So we have these two specific bills. Now, the bills will change as the session moves forward because bills get wrapped into each other and they get rewritten and sent to various committees. We also know that when the session ends at the end of next year, well, I guess, January of next year, a year and 2 months from now, there's going to be a new set of bills that pop up. So what we're building here is a long-term relationship that are focused around very specific asks of movement. But that said, don't think that this is set in stone, that this is the only thing that you may have to ask and bring up to your state reps. So know that really, again, it's about relationships, and then secondarily, the asks come after that. Third, we really want you to bring your own concerns. We want you to bring your issues, your stories, your importance. So make it personable, make it matter, and really also get the feedback from the office to find out what matters to them. You're going to come in and say, I want to stay alive because I'm a small business owner and I bring tax revenue to the district. That's a great angle to have as an issue. Or maybe you're a young parent and you want to help improve your access to schools because your kid's going to be in school for the next 18 years. Something along those lines. But I want you to also pay attention to where in that conversation that spark hits in the office. Look for questions that are asked by the aides or the legislator. Look for stories that are told by the aides or the legislator. Really, we want to understand kind of the importance that that legislator brings to their office. And depending on what their particular interests are, that will help them as they're moving along because we do know that bicycling could be a variety of issues. Is it health? Is it wellness? Is it congestion? Is it economics? Is it safety? Is it really development of the idea of progress in society? There's so many different ways which bicycling can matter. And we want to know if there's a specific angle with a specific office, because that will help us as we're catering who we ask for sponsorship for specific bills. And then lastly, overall, the general momentum. If you are fanning out with us and you're wearing your bike pin and you're being a friendly face to the people you meet on the elevator, to the people you see in the hallway, to the receptionist at the desk. Maybe you give them a bike month sticker. Maybe you give them a little bike pin. It really is just creating a friendly force of activity within the State House, which, to be honest, to me is my favorite day of wandering around the State House and seeing everybody with the little bike pins, and then to have that commented on as I am coming back in a week or two, and they'll say, "Oh, I saw a really nice advocate from make Attleboro who gave me a bike pin and I keep it on my desk." Little things like that really do help move the needle as we're building this relationship on Beacon Hill. If you are having a meeting, we do want to make sure that your meetings are concise and brief and to the point. So please, I know that we could go on and on and on about the bike advocacy issues that matter to us most, but I do want you to keep that the aides that we're talking to are incredibly busy. They have meetings all day long. They have issues that they're ping-ponging around with, and they might not be able to give you a full half an hour, even a full 20 minutes of time. So really do keep your conversations as brief and concise as possible, but please feel free to follow up with them and to make sure that there's a continued dialogue. We really want you to start with a couple of sentences as to the asks. So we'll have that detailed for you in the literature. You can also hand them the paper that we have for you to make it very easy for them. We do want you to do a little bit of homework if you are planning a meeting with a legislator to find out what matters to their district, which is probably your district, matters to them based on what committees they may be a part of. And in other bills, they might be co-sponsoring because there's different flavors and different lenses with which legislators take at their work at the State House. We do want you to be mindful of the time. So arrive a little early and maybe end a little early as well. That would be very appreciative if you give them back 5 minutes of their time. And lastly, you're welcome to wear whatever you feel comfortable with, but we do recommend kind of a business oriented, not too formal. This is me in a suit, by the way, down in Washington. So if we were going to Congress, I might say a tie might be appropriate, but I could get away with a button down such as this. But we do ask that you do not have spandex if possible, because we are very mindful of the ideologies of inclusion in our bicycling advocacy, and we want this to be relatable to folks. And sometimes people feel a little alienated when bicycling becomes performance based. So really kind of think about how can we get to the common denominator out there. And because we're not just talking about bicycling concerns, we are talking about traffic safety concerns. We do think that this kind of opens the umbrella to a lot more of the sensibilities of just people as they get around as vulnerable users out there. But, our suggestions are go as fancy as you like, but stay comfy because we are going to be moving around all day. So how to prepare? Thanks. Now, step one, attending this webinar. That's very lovely for you. To do a little bit of a prep work, come up with an elevator pitch about why you're there. If you represent an organization, if you're part of a committee, if you are proud of a particular part of bicycling or traffic safety that you really want to emphasize, any sort of project-based element that might be supported by folks on Beacon Hill, really start to do a little bit of homework to kind of really get a meaningful message to connect to the person you're talking to, whether it's an aide or a rep. They will know the district. They will know that particular intersection or that particular crash that you want to mention. So feel free to do a little bit of prep work with the homework. And in terms of and, start with a thank you, really kind of get into acknowledgement of the challenges of the work, and then break out to the discussion, which will include the asks, and make sure that you're saving time to ask questions so that you're actually getting feedback. Questions along the lines of, what are you seeing out there in the district? Or what's a particular challenge that maybe you on your committee can help address? So really kind of flip the script. So it's not just us asking of our legislators, but we are creating a feedback loop where we are there to support them in their work. These are not miracle workers, and democracy is a participatory action. We need to be engaged with their work just as much as they need to be engaged with our work. So really kind of helping build that bridge is key by asking how you can really pay attention and support their work as well. And then again, give that information back to us at Mass Bike, and that will help us in our work. And do provide a couple minutes of wrap up. And if you need to transfer cards or make sure that you're scheduling a follow-up meeting. That's always, can we check in a week if there's any questions that you need to follow up with, or if there's further information that Mass Bike can provide. Make sure that you are being very clear about the next steps and that we are looped in with that just the same. Cool. Great. So that's the meeting, that's the day of. A little bit about the legislative calendar. So this is a very dense slide. I'm only going to spend about 30 seconds on it, but we are about two-thirds of the way through the first year of a 2-year session, which means that the legislation that we are pushing for is just about to get to committee and needs to be voted out of committee by early December, right after the Thanksgiving recess. And so now is a really good time to elevate the bills that we are pushing because there is a lot of committee conversations happening right now about if bills need to be rewritten or if bills need to be combined or how things are going to start to be moved. If things get moving in early December, generally there is a push up until mid-February or so, which will be in the coming year, of lining up these bills so that they move into the next committee if they're going to be moving. And we can talk a little bit on Wednesday about the exact position of the bills that they're in at the moment. But there are two chambers that we're focusing on. Obviously, there's the House side and the Senate side. And both of the bills that we are pursuing both have House representatives and Senate representatives of sponsorship. So we have two opportunities to really make sure that our bills keep progressing. This is a very dense slide. I'm not going to go into it, but if you have any questions about how the process is following the rules and changing the House and Senate rules out there. It is a very convoluted and complex process, but the be all end all is the people who you are talking to need to know that this issue matters and whatever they can do to help those bills keep moving as we go into the start of the next year is absolutely crucial to keep our issues alive. Cool. So we have two asks. The asks relate towards safety cameras, also known as automated enforcement, and then also expanding the truck safety requirements, which were part of a bill package that got passed with an act to reduce traffic fatalities 2 sessions ago, but have yet to be implemented. And so, what we're looking to do is sharpen the teeth of the legislation that did get passed already to have the truck safety standards as broad as possible across the Commonwealth. Again, we will give you documentation on this stuff, but I'll give you a little primer now. And then I should also caveat by saying you'll have your own issues that you are more than welcome to bring up. These are your meetings as well. If you're just dropping literature at an office, it's very easy just to drop the bill and say hello and make a 30-second remark about how you're concerned around traffic safety. But if you are scheduling a meeting with your district reps, by all means, your issues are your issues, and we don't want to keep you just gate kept into what Mass Bike cares about. This is about, again, building relationships. So the first is the traffic regulation using road safety cameras. We are pretty optimistic with this bill right now. This is maybe 8 years in the works at this point. We've done a great amount of ground truthing to make sure that the bill, as it is written in both the House and the Senate side, have the protections and concerns that have been brought up by various interest groups over the various sessions. What this would do, however, this would allow jurisdictions like cities and towns to install cameras to capture violations of people who are running red lights in automobiles, speeding, making rights on red when they shouldn't, and crossing into school zones. And the idea that this would remove the need to have a witnessing officer at the scene, and you would be allowed to have a infraction based off of the license plate of the vehicle. This is very clear that this is not about capturing facial technology, facial recognition. This is not about capturing the driver's data. This is about capturing the license plate, which is already being done. For instance, if you drive on the Mass Turnpike, they charge you with tolls by capturing your license plate. If you come over the Tobin Bridge in Boston, you get captured in tolls using the license plate. So what this would allow similar technology to be used for traffic safety, not just tolling. We have built-in safety regards in terms of racial bias. We have built-in safety regards in terms of data processing, data analysis, and data destruction, and also built-in safety regarding anybody who wants to um, contest any of this. There's a very clearly outlined process within the bill saying how this can be contested through the court system. So we feel that this is a fairly evolved and advanced piece of legislation that this session we can move forward. If we get it, this would match us with 22 other states that are doing this. I personally grew up outside Washington, D.C., which has this, and it's been very effective. This is also common practice in Europe, and behavior changes because people understand that there are consequences for unsafe driving out there. And this is also important because it removes the need for direct officer interaction, which we know can be both biased and dangerous for all parties involved. And so we have support for this piece of legislation from the administration. We know that Mass DOT is interested in having this signed into law. We know that the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security is interested in moving ahead with this. And we know that every district attorney in the Commonwealth also support this. We have a letter of support from all the DAs out there. And we do think that this is a more equitable way of doing traffic enforcement. And again, it is not based off facial recognition. So we do think it removes some of the biases that are either implicit or subconscious in our judicial system of traffic safety. So please, hopefully this is not a concern for any of you, but this is one of the pieces of legislation that we do think are moving forward. We can detail on Wednesday where exactly this stands, but as of today, this in the Senate has been voted favorably out of the Transportation Committee. And we have the House version, which has been delayed of a needing to be voted out until March of next year. So the focus may very well be to House representatives to say, hey, this is something that you can move. We've got support on this. Let's get it across the finish line. I should also be clear that this does not mandate cameras. This only allows a jurisdiction to put cameras up if they want to. So this is an opt-in and it removes the prohibition. Great. The other piece of legislation is expanding truck safety requirements. This is a evolution of what we were able to get passed with an act to reduce traffic fatalities, which required Commonwealth-owned and leased trucks to have side guards, convex mirrors, and backup cameras. We know that those elements save lives. This is part of our World Day of Remembrance push, and sadly, many of the fatal crashes, specifically of bicyclists, are involving large vehicle drivers turning right at intersections. We know that side guards and convex mirrors can prevent these fatal crashes from occurring. This is common practice. Boston has these on all of their fleet trucks. Cambridge has them, Somerville, etc., in the Boston core. This is also common practice in New York City, across Canada, across Europe. This is basically the way of, in mixed traffic, saving the lives of vulnerable users. We think this is common sense. We know that this is not a significant burden of cost. And we also know that nobody wants to kill anybody out there on the roadways. So we do think that this is a benefit to the truck drivers and the trucking companies because it makes their drivers safer and their fleets safer. So this is essentially an expansion of the bill that we already had passed unanimously back 2 sessions ago to really reinforce the desire all across the Commonwealth to make our roads safer. Great. And we do think that this has some momentum as well, specifically based on the fact that literally every single representative and senator voted in favor of this bill, a more limited bill of this, but voted in favor of this bill 2 sessions ago. Cool. So those are our two asks. Now, again, you may have more issues to bring up, but because we want to keep these conversations pretty focused, and this is just traffic safety oriented as our push, we're really just having these two bills to move forward. If you wanted to add some more data and some more storytelling to your conversation, I also recommend that you check out the Mass DOT Impact Crash Portal. This is on the mass.gov website. This is a real-time, data-driven, publicly accessible database of the crashes that Mass DOT and Mass RMV are tracking throughout the Commonwealth. And you can filter it for specific modes, such as bicyclists or pedestrians. You can filter it for specific years. You can also filter it for specific regions. So if you wanted to look up the crash rates in your area, in your municipality, this is the way to do it. If you wanted to see how trends are looking over time, this is the way to do it. It's a relatively new portal. If you're unfamiliar with it, this was part of the mandate that came from our Act to Reduce Traffic Fatalities law. But this is a great opportunity to kind of get yourself educated as to what the numbers are out there. Here's a little bit of what the portal looks like. And again, this is just the impact crash portal that Mass DOT operates. And again, it's under the mass.gov site. If you have any questions about that, please get in touch with us at MassBike and we can point you in the right direction. Cool. And then lastly, I don't want to make this so much of a data-driven conversation. What we are trying to do with World Day of Remembrance is humanize and remember the personal losses that are taking place on our streets. So here's just an example of one of the World Day of Remembrance events. This is from Springfield from last year. They did a great job every year in Springfield of really elevating the issue of traffic violence. And they do so with a coordinated event, with press, with a kind of an invitation of both policymakers um, and victims and advocates together. This is an example of them outside of the Springfield City Hall, I do believe, where they are putting all of the pedestrian fatalities up for remembrance. And World Day of Remembrance this year is on Sunday, November 16th. If you wanted to do an event in your local community, MassBike is offering mini grants to help support any costs you might incur for doing a local event. We have a couple of events already scheduled. We're going to do a very big event here in Boston, which is going to take place from Cambridge Common out to the State House to include some of our asks. But World Day of Remembrance does take place on the 16th. But if you want to have your event not on the 16th, of course, this is your event in your community. This is a little bit of a side ask. So, not to put too much on our advocates, but the point of World Day of Remembrance, including the State House visits or in-person visits in district with your legislators, or attending a World Day of Remembrance event or hosting a World Day of Remembrance event really is to elevate the issues around our commitment and our rededication towards making sure that we are minimizing to zero our serious crashes and fatal fatalities out there across the Commonwealth. Um, I really do appreciate you being your local advocates. Mass Bike and our coalition partners are small organizations that depend on local advocates to be the weight of movement in your communities. And we all know that Massachusetts really is a locally based state. So our ask is to make sure that we are doing what we can in your communities with you, in partnership with you. And so I really do appreciate that you are coming in with World Day of Remembrance with your own advocacy and making your own connections. With that, I'm happy to pause. I realize that was quite a bit of information, but I really appreciate that you are chiming in. And again, we hope to see you next Wednesday at the State House. And please get in touch with us if you have any questions or concerns about ways that you can plug in with World Day of Remembrance, either for the State House visit or elsewise, to make sure that your impact is able to help move the needle to make some real changes out there on our roads. Great. With that, Emma, maybe you can stop the recording and